Hello everyone and welcome back to the Chess24 Legends of Chess Final 4. It's the other pair of the Final 4, Nepomniachtchi and Anish Giri, and this is one of the games of their match. Really an interesting one, so let's just dive straight into it. And in their previous matchup, in the preliminaries of the Chess24 Legends, Giri won their match. So here, let's see if Giri can do it again. So Nepo with the white pieces opens with e4. We have e5 by Giri and bishop to c4 going for the bishop's opening. Knight to f6 and the d3 now. We have knight to c6 and the knight to c3. We have bishop to b4, now pinning the knight here nicely, developing, preparing the castle, and Nepo goes knight to f3. We have d6 and castles, and here this bishop no longer serves any purpose here, and well, the knight can now move, so here just bishop captures on c3. It is the most common move in the position, and it does make sense. You kind of mess up white's pawn structure. White will have some extra support for d4 in the future, but you lost the bishop pair. However, it doesn't matter because you have this knight to a5 move, which will get rid of white's light square bishop as well at any point, because black is the one that controls the tension, and you haven't really given up the bishop pair. You've just successfully messed up white's pawn structure. So here bishop back to b3, and here we have h6. Here Giri just takes away the g5 square from Nepo's pieces, and now known moves here are bishop a4 check and rook to e1. With rook to e1 in 2014, Alexander Grishuk defeated Tomaszewski in the FIDE World Rapid Cup, but here we have h3 by Nepo, and it is as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Giri deals with this. He continues developing, queen to e7. He wants to get the bishop into the game, castle, hopefully somewhere safe, and now knight to h2, preparing this f4 idea. And Giri doesn't want to allow f4, so he pushes g5, saying that first he captures on b3, gets rid of the very strong light square bishop, a captures, and now pushes this g5 idea, stops f4 from white, and says, I most likely will not be castling king's side. And I'm also very much interested in playing g4, opening up the g file, and getting some sort of an attack on your already castled king. So here Nepo goes rook to e1, and rook to g8. Giri now prepares g4, and now knight to f1. Now with this g5 move, the f5 square has been permanently weakened. You don't have the pawn here to control it, so this knight might be coming to squares like e3, g3, and then later on maybe even to f5 or d5. So here g4, now threatening just to open up the position, and if you allow black to do this, then black will have an excellent game. So of course Nepo closes it, but now Giri decides to not allow this g3 move that will make white's position perfectly safe, but rather to play a g3 himself, and now he gives up a pawn, but he gets a semi-open g file in return. And here the problem with knight captures here is that you can go knight to g4, and now you just threaten to capture the pawn here, and if you advance at queen here, goes after the h2 square. It's nothing spectacular. White will have an escape route here, so it's not really that big of a deal, but it's a bit too much maybe than you want to allow black to have. So after g3 you have f captures by Nepo, now defending the h4 pawn, but now comes rook to g6, and now the game just continues. Giri will try to bring the bishop into the game, hide the king somewhere, probably on d7, get the rook into the game, and hopefully start an attack. Here we have b4. Just grabbing more space on the queen side, not allowing any a5 ideas. Also black might have been considering this, but here Giri finds the excellent knight to h5, or rather maybe it's not so excellent. He goes after the g3 pawn, but also he gives up a knight. Why is he doing this? Well, the thing is, if you capture the knight, then bishop to g4 traps the queen. But there is a problem to this. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the move that Nepo played while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the thing that we already mentioned. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, Nepo played queen captures on h5. He gave up the queen, for the bishop and the rook, and 2 pawns. He already grabbed 1 pawn, now he wants to grab the 2 pieces, and he will also win the h6 pawn, and he likes his position being down a queen here. So Giri traps at bishop g4, and Nepo now goes for queen captures on g6, with f captures, and now bishop captures on h6. So what is the evaluation of this position? Well, white has 2 rooks, a knight, and a bishop, and black has a queen, a rook, and a bishop. However, this bishop, once it lands, for example, on g5, will have an excellent outpost here. You will not be able to get it away from their control. Also, from here, controlling f8, so rook is not coming into the game via the only open file on the board. You will probably move the knight, play rook f1, double up rooks here on the f file, and white's moves are very natural. For black, it's not so easy to find moves. So king d7, preparing to bring the rook into the game. Now knight e3, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to e6, and now rook to f1, claiming the f file. We have queen to h7, attacking the bishop, and now bishop just goes back to g5. And there's no way for the queen to enter the position in any way. Like you could try something like queen to h5, maybe trying to infiltrate, something like this, but white doesn't really care. Or you can just even play g4 even. Ideas like this are still possible. If the bishop leaves the defense of this square, then rook f7 can also be very dangerous. So it's not easy to find moves. With queen to g8 now by Giri, I presume a waiting move, and now rook to f6, preparing to double up rooks on the f file. We have a6, and now rook 8 to f1. And okay, for the moment, while this bishop is guarding the f7 square, white does not have all that easy of a job breaking through here. So we have rook to e8, and now just c4, preparing to put the knight on d5, where it will either be an excellent piece or white will have to give up this bishop guarding the f7 square. So b6 by Giri, and now knight to d5. And now the thing is, if you capture the knight, well, if you capture, black will just capture, and now you don't have a lot of moves here. Rook to f7 is coming, so let's say king here, rook f7, queen to somewhere. The rook has no moves, the queen has no moves. It's just a very ugly position to play for black. Let's say you play something like this. You're going to play the other rook to f6, now just threaten to win the pawn. If the queen defends it, now you can even push c5, bust open the position. And now let's say after everything gets traded off, now you're going to go bishop e3, go after this pawn, play c4, and so on. And black is practically without any moves here. You are free to do as you will. So after knight d5, we have king to c6. Giri tries to hide the king on the queen side. And now rook back to f2. Now Nepo will do some remaneuvering. He wants to play c5, but he first wants to shift the knight over to c3. So queen g7, and now king to h2 first. A bit of a safer square for the king, guarding the g3 pawn, before committing to anything on the queen side. We have king to b7, and now knight to c3. So now you want to play c5. You didn't want to do it while the knight was on d5 to allow this capture. So first knight to c3. We have rook to a8, now maybe with ideas of creating a pass pawn with a5, and now rook back to f6, attacking the bishop, queen g8 defending, and now finally c5. Nepo busts open the position. We have queen e8, you constantly have to keep an eye on the bishop and on the g6 pawn. So knight to d5 now, and now you're putting a lot of pressure on this b6 pawn. For example, captures, bishop e3 will put a lot of pressure on it. So here we have d captures on c5, b captures, and b captures. Giri grabs that c5 pawn, but in return offers the b file for Nepo's rook to control. So rook to b1 with check. And now it's a problem. Where do you go with your king? If king here, then just captures, forks the king and the queen and the rook. If you go king to c6, then c4, followed by, well, depending on what black plays, but the thing is, black doesn't have any moves. You can't go rook b8. If rook b8, you just trade, for example, captures, and you lose the bishop. The queen cannot move from the defense of the bishop and the pawn. The bishop cannot move as it's pinned, so you might try something like king d7 to unpin the bishop, but now rook b7 is coming, and there's just no upside to any of this. You can capture one of the attackers of the c7 pawn, e captures, and a5, you start pushing your pass pawn, but now d6, and black just falls apart. Let's say rook c8, you're gonna capture here, captures, and now rook b to b6, you're gonna capture this pawn, and it's just gonna be a very quick win for white. So instead, after rook to b1, you can't go here, you can't go here. Giri decides to go king to c8, but now comes bishop to h6, just threatening rook to f8 to win the queen. So king d7, but now you've basically done the same thing, only the other way around, so rook to b7. And here we have bishop captures on d5. We have e captures on d5, and now king to c8. I just realized I actually wanted to increase the volume of the pieces for this video, and I didn't. I'm gonna add like 5 decibels now just to see if it makes a difference, so you guys will be able to tell. There we go. And now rook back to b1 as the rook was under attack. And here, what are you gonna do here? There's not much you can do. We have king to d7 again, just trying to stay alive, but now rook b to f1. And here, there's not much more you can do here. The pawn is excellent here. You're going to play c4, play rook to f7, followed by rook to f6, which will result in checkmate. Or you're going to play rook to d8, which is what Giri did. But now, feel free to pause the video here and win the game in the quickest way possible, while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding the obvious rook to f8, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook to f8. So now, the thing is, the queen doesn't really have any good squares. Queen to e7 was played by Giri, but it was also in this position that Anish Giri resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Just a rook to f7 wins the queen, and that's it. Captures, and the white will be up a whole bishop. And it's there's not much to do. You're up a whole bishop and the pawn, so you know, just this creates a passed pawn, and this one will be dealt with accordingly. So yeah, very nice game by Nepo, and the Nepo was also able to win their first match. So we'll see what happens today. Will Giri be able to retaliate, or will we already have our first finalist? So, once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Glenn Mangold, Priyam Gupta, Doug McNabb, Colin Cunningham, and Dan McCormick for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. And a big happy birthday from Jonathan to Albin, a special request. So I join in the congratulations. I hope you have a good one, Albin, and you know that everything you wish for comes true, unless it's something really weird. So yeah. Once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Legends of Chess Final 4, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Saturday.